Good morning, folks. Hope you're well. So just to what I'll start to try and do is just highlight some of the things I've sent out this morning. Some of you may have seen them. Just the school's offer, which has now been approved by all stakeholders, including the staff and the governors and the leadership team. But in essence, going forward from the 1st of June, and I use that date quite loosely because there's always a possibility things might change. But we've got to go forward assuming that we have to offer some type of provision for reception in year 6 from the 1st of June. And just to clarify that we are still open for key workers and will continue to be open for key workers next week and thereafter. So if you, and I know a lot of parents currently are having some changes to their work schedule, so please just contact me via email. And we can obviously add your children to the key worker group. But I'll just go through some of the kind of key aspects of that and what it looks like in terms of our offer. So it's reception year 6, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday and Friday, part-time phased entry, and those parents have been informed. Reception parents should have received an email this morning from Mrs. Feltham alerting them to which group they are in, and the year 6s should have been alerted as well on their class dojo pages about which class they're in on what days. The Wednesday is going to be closed for reception year 6, so we can thoroughly clean the classes that they're going to be using, albeit the key workers children will still be in school. Okay, just to kind of clarify that, so reception year 6 will have their own classes, their own bubbles, their own groups and their own teachers. The key worker children will also have their own classes and their own teachers. So there'll be a variety, up to 7 to 8 different bubbles across the site, which we are able to manage with the staff that we have. So that's kind of what it will look like. If you're a parent listening in from reception year 6, if you've got any questions or queries from the details that we've sent in, please don't hesitate to email me. I won't spend today too much going over a lot of that because I know there are other parents listening. But in essence, when you arrive at school on the 1st of June, it'll be very clear, very visual for you where the children need to go, how to drop them off, where to drop them off, and how to leave. All I would say that through all of this, I've emphasised that safety for children and staff and for you is paramount. So when arriving, please expect kind of a Tesco supermarket kind of feel to a one-way system about dropping children off, saying goodbye to them. Within obviously the social distancing measures we've got to adhere to. So that'll be very, very clear to you. And we're working incredibly hard. All the staff are working incredibly hard to make this quite a low key thing for the children when they arrive. I think that's important to try and make it as non-threatening as possible. But equally, in order to do that, there's lots of effort, lots of work going in, the logistics and practicalities about what the first day will look like. I'll be there on the first day. Mrs. Smith probably will be, and I know some of the governors will be attending just to kind of reassure you and to obviously say hello. As that from the 1st of June, the teachers will be rotated, and as I said before, we'll try and, for those in reception year 6, we'll make it as familiar as possible for them, and the faces will be as familiar as well. They'll know who they are, and the groups that they're in, they'll know the children they're in, and they're obviously got friendship groups as well. So we've taken into account all those things, so that when they come back to school on that Monday, the 1st of June, it's very familiar for them, and as I said, very non-threatening. Just to kind of reassure you, the groups that we've put the children into are below 15, or much below 15. Year 6 is no more than 10, and in reception it'll be no more than 6. And throughout the day, what we'll be offering a variety of teaching activities that we'd normally be doing with the key worker children as well. But equally, we'll try and use the outside as much as we possibly can, which is key. We obviously, as stated, we won't be providing, well, we are providing, but not directly providing lunch for the children, just because these are breakout areas that we need to keep clean, and to be using those every day, and other children and those groups to be mixed in these breakout areas is going to be tough to manage. So we've kind of eliminated that risk, which is why reception will be doing sessions morning and afternoon, and year 6 we're bringing in their own packed lunches and sitting at their desks. Everything we're doing within school is going to try and adhere to the social distancing measures and the cleaning process that we have to provide for the children and staff. Everyone's going to be 2 meters apart in reception, as much as we possibly can within their groups. We'll see what happens. I'm quite happy and honest, and I'll be honest and clear to say that the guidelines state from the government that we know that might be quite difficult for the reception children, and we're not going to ignore them. We're not going to be dismissive of them. And all I would say is, during the day, if they're hurt or upset about things, of course we will comfort them as long as you're happy with that. And if you're not, then it's probably wise that you don't send them to school, because obviously we don't want it to be a scary place for them. But other than those kind of accidents that might happen, we do need to try and adhere as much as we possibly can to the social distancing measures. In year 6, how that might work will be a lot easier, because they're a lot older and understand. And the way we set up the classrooms, they'll be 2 meters apart. And during the school day, they'll be split into smaller groups at lunchtime, so they can obviously share separate little bubbles, but together as well. And we're able to manage reception in year 6 as it stands. There'll be continuous washing and cleaning of hands during the day, as always, before break times, before children go home, before snacks and all those things. So we're doing that. Toilets will be used 1 in, 1 out as much as we possibly can. All of these areas also will be cleaned. And just to reassure you, the children will be using very little of the schools when they're in there. They'll be their own spaces, where they'll have their own teachers and their own support, their own resources, their own toys, their own stationery, their own trays. Everything will be a little satellite place for them, which will try and make as comfortable and as non-threatening as possible. I'll come to some of those questions. I'll just finish a few of these first, and I'll get to some of the questions that you're sending. The other parts of the daily organisation for you to be considerate of is, and I think I've mentioned on the letter that I sent, that we want, when the children arrive, particularly for reception, because I know some year 6s might come on their own. I would prefer if there was a parent that did bring them, and it is only one parent to bring the child to school to accompany them. If you want to bring more than one can come onto the site and one would have to stay off. Obviously, we're trying to limit and reduce the risk. But if there is a reception child that is finding it tough and is anxious about leaving mum or dad when they're dropped off, we can't get ourselves involved and pry the children away, really. That'll be up to you and your responsibility to do so. If they're too stressed and anxious about it, then my suggestion would be that they'd go home for that day. And I suppose the reason why I'm coming to you now about all of this is giving you at least a week and another weekend's worth of time to speak to the children about starting school again on that Monday, if it's the Monday, and obviously whatever group they're in. It could be Tuesday, Thursday, or Friday. So they're the kind of key things, really. We've said also the children don't need to wear uniform, because initially I thought uniform would be good, but then realizing that it'd probably be easier for you to manage children in their own clothes, and you can clean them at the end of the week rather than cleaning the uniform every night. So we do ask that the children come with their own bags. If year 6, your own packed lunch boxes, and everything is to be kept in that bag. That's really important. It won't be touched by anyone else apart from the child. We have said that uniform, I think I've just made a decision just to do a blanket comfortable clothing across the board. I understand that might be different for some parents, but on the whole, I think parents will find it easier just to send children in their own clothes every day or the days that they're there, and then clean them at the end of the week. Otherwise, it could be quite an ordeal cleaning uniform every night and send them in the next day. We can review that. We'll review that as we go along. And I think, as like with anything, with this, and you'll see with a risk assessment that's on the website as well, which will be going up today, that all of this will be under review. I don't think anything's going to be perfect from day one. We know that practicalities will be as accurate as it possibly can be, but we will be reviewing this on a day-to-day basis. And obviously we'll be holding, as part of the risk assessment, we'll be holding daily briefings with all the staff teams. We'll be in contact with me and the SLT about things that they've noticed during the day, or what can we improve on, or what things we can make easier for the children. The classrooms aren't currently set up yet, so as soon as they are, I'm more than happy to send pictures of what the classrooms will look like. That's not a problem. You should have received a email today if your children are in reception and if they're in year 6 about which group they're in. You should have come to you. If you haven't received it, which means we either don't have the correct email for you. So please, if you haven't received an email, or when I say reception would have received an email, year 6 will have received details of June the 1st on their class dojo pages. So if you haven't received that, please can you let me know and I'll make sure that's sent to you. I wouldn't suggest bringing additional siblings. I know that might be difficult, but if you're going to bring the whole family to school, we can't allow the whole family to come on site. It'll just be that child and another adult, which is absolutely fine. And they need to wait at the main gates. But obviously, if they're unsupervised, that's obviously difficult for you. But we do have to reduce the amount of people that are on site for obvious reasons. And so when their children come onto site, they will have one adult and one adult only, I'm afraid. Yes, key workers still will be Monday to Friday, regardless of the thorough clean on the Wednesday. And I would just kind of reassure you that if your work schedule's changing and you're now a key worker and you're defined as a key worker group parent, please just email me straight away. There's no restriction on full-time places or anything like that. If you need space for your child because you need to go back to work, that's fine. But the caveat is, and it was obviously I'd written this in the letter, if the key worker group of children, which obviously are still the priority group, if those numbers escalate, then I will have to review this offer, because I think we all understand that the amount of staff we have to sustain smaller bubbles of children across the site will become more difficult the more numbers we have. And I suppose as a result of that, we have myself and Miss Smith were really talking a lot about what the plan would look like for those other cohorts to attend from 1 to 5. So, and I'll be honest, that will be a very difficult challenge to see how we would do that under the guidance of social distancing. Yes, if you haven't received it yet, you should have done. They've been sent this morning in reception. They all have been sent to the emails that we have on record. So if they've changed, or if you want to send me directly or Miss Feltham your new email address or an email address, she will send you that letter outlining things for reception. It must be reception because year 6 are all on their class dojo pages. So in terms of the details for June the 1st. So just to kind of clarify about COVID-19 itself, if your child has come to school, whether a key worker, reception or year 6, if they're showing any signs or developing symptoms, please obviously don't send them in. Please alert us, because if that child had been in the day before and recognised, if you'd recognised some symptoms that evening, then obviously I have to take action and I have to follow the risk assessment in terms of the whole of that bubble group would need to be sent home as opposed to closing the whole school. And then they'd have to isolate for that family, that individual family, for 7 days, but the rest of the group would have to isolate for 14 days. So that's really important that you keep in contact with me or anyone in school that you can send a message to if children do become symptomatic. So as I said, Mr. Carter, you're absolutely right. And if your situation changes and you're no longer WFHing anymore, and you're now pursuing clients and things elsewhere, and your role is going back to work, and then your children are more than welcome to be in school as key workers. But obviously, your boys, obviously will be part of those groups anyway on the days that they're being in. I just want to add here very quickly, and I think this is important. And for those folk that have got children in reception in year 6 who are also key workers and they've been part of the key worker group currently, they're going to stay in the key worker group. Now, I know that might seem a little harsh that they can't go into their reception groups, but due to the risk assessment of not mixing groups, I have to keep those children that are currently in the key worker group in the key worker group, and they can't attend their reception or year 6 groupings during the week. that's just trying to reduce the risk of anything to do with any spreading of the infection if it's there. Now, I know that's a bit upsetting, and I had to make a decision one way or the other. If not, and I mix the groups, then the likelihood then if things happened and escalated in terms of any children with symptoms, I'm sure people would be particularly happy with me. So I know that's a tough thing, but I hope you understand that's trying to keep the children and the staff as safe as possible. No, the groups A, B, C, and D in reception are, so A and B are Monday and Tuesday, C and D are Thursday and Friday in reception. Now, within each of those groups, so group A and B will be split into no more than 6. Okay. I think Miss Hurl, I think both parents have to be key workers? Well, yes. The difficulty is if you're both key workers, and what we're finding is now that those are our key workers. One that someone's been at home and the other's been at work. You've been able to manage the homeschooling and not send them in. But if you're still at home and you're able to deal with the children at home as a key worker, and you're not part of reception or year 6, then really they should still be at home. And if you don't know when you have to go back yet, just keep us apprised of when your situation changes, and we'll deal with it from there. Yeah, so Layla's mum there, you're absolutely right, you're a key worker, so Layla would be in the key worker group. So no, there is no child with symptoms at all. We've not been notified of anyone with any unconfirmed COVID-19. But those that, as soon as anyone becomes or develops symptoms within those bubble groups, all parents within that group will be informed immediately. That is part of the risk assessment. If anyone does show signs, every single parent within that group will be notified to come collect their children and then isolate for 14 days. So just to be clear, if your child has been attending as a key worker child, they will not be joining the reception or the year 6 groups. But I assume they'll still be coming to school because they're key worker children. Yeah, so Miss Caudry, that's absolutely right. So if your child in year 6 is part of the key worker, I think we only have one at the moment in year 6, that's a key worker. But if you're returning to work and you require full-time care of your child, then that will be difficult, because you've got to consider, well, your child's going to be coming to either school Tuesday or Thursday or Friday, and if your work deems that you're in full-time, you'll have to, and you know that now, then that child will have to become part of the key worker group, because obviously you need some care for Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I'd assume. It's trying to kind of really reduce the risk and keeping the bubbles and the groups as separate as possible, as much as we can. I do know this is all potentially either frustrating. I completely understand that it's a big decision for whether you send your children back to school if your parents are reception in year 6. I understand it's a difficult situation, and it's that moral dilemma and of whether you send children to school knowing whether they're going to be 100% safe. All I can say to you is we've covered all bases in terms of safety and in school as much as we possibly can, and that's the most honest message I can give you. We've done all we can to keep the children safe as far as we possibly can. Now, I know people have said, well, when children go to school ordinarily, no one's 100% safe. But I think these are a very different set of rules and a very different set of circumstances. And that's all we have to try and adhere to and try and reduce the risk against. So I understand it's tough. Well, the thing is, though, if both parents are key workers and they're both at work, then yes, of course, the key worker scheme at school is available for you. I would say that if, for instance, you're a key worker who's working all the time from home, then you need to message me and email me and talk about what we can offer you. But if you're a key worker that hasn't gone back to work yet, and you're at home and you can still be at home with the children, then in your mind, I'd imagine you'll still be keen to have them at home, because that's probably still the safest place for them. Preschool, you should have received some notification or going to receive notification. I know Casey is dealing with groups at the moment and staff, and I believe that's probably either coming out soon for you, but I think she's just clarifying a number of things. I spoke to her yesterday about obviously the key worker groups again, and for instance, we have a preschool child that will remain in that key worker group or at preschool, and that's where they'll stay. So she'll be in contact with you directly. Ms. Powick, the likelihood that year 1 and 2 come back before the 6 weeks holiday, yes, that's just awaiting government guidance. May 28th, apparently, they're supposed to let us know what's going to be happening from the 1st of June for the other children. Whether that will be the case, I don't know. And I think if you obviously keep, I'm sure all of you are keeping abreast of the news, that there are many local authorities that have just quite categorically said, no, we're not opening. Gloucestershire says we are. So things are in place in Gloucestershire, and there are other counties that have just said, no, we're not doing it, understandably. Okay, so thanks, Mr. Britton, for mentioning that. Yeah, so in the letter, it says about dojo will be checked less frequently, because obviously we've got staff who are now teaching in school, and we've rotated that, but we've done it in a way. So if they're in school, if I just use Miss Phillips as an example in year 6, if Miss Phillips is teaching on Monday and Tuesday, then Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, she'll do some work on dojo. But what I've asked, because I know a number of parents have texted in about how to organise the week, the staff will be the Friday before the 1st of June, and every Friday thereon, they'll be sending a weekly overview for you with activities, links, so you can kind of organise your week a little bit better with topic activities. So it's just so hopefully it compartmentalizes your week, and then you know where to go. And it'll be up to you how you spread that out amongst the week. But we thought that might be easier instead of loads of things going on a bit piecemeal on dojo. We thought we'd give you a list of the things you're looking out for. So hopefully that will support you. So yes, the work will still be going on, and we still expect you to upload things to the portfolio. And it's really important that you upload to the portfolio and not email, because it's nice to keep it in one place for the children. Yes, so Taylor, we're still finalising, because obviously we're finalising teachers for each group. And all I can just reassure you is that when the children arrive, they'll know who their teachers are. So in reception, we've kept the teachers that teach in reception will be the teachers that teach the children when they arrive. So they will know who they are. At the moment, Mrs. Moore, it's very unlikely that the children will be able to go and visit their new schools. I was speaking to a couple of people yesterday on Zoom and via email about how we're trying to see how when the year 6s are in school, how we can create a link to their new teachers in their new schools. So we're going through that process at the moment. We've initiated that, which I'm hoping the secondary schools have done, because they have greater IT infrastructure to do that. But we're starting that process now. So absolutely, hopefully, the children can gain some type of insight with their new teachers whilst they're in school before the summer holidays. But unless the restrictions are released, I can't see how they're going to be able to go to their other schools. It might happen. Let's just watch your space. Will this be the case for reception teachers who are shielding? I'm trying to think what you're referring to, Mr. Donnelly. Will this be the case for reception teachers who are shielding? As I said, there are some reception teachers that are shielding, and they will continue to do things on dojo for those reception children. And just to kind of, a reception will mean we're doing loads of things for the children at the moment, and it's fantastic what they're doing. And you'll still see Mrs. Tilley and Miss Parfit on videos and things like that. But I would say that that will carry on in reception for year 6 and the other year groups, that the list of activities they're going to send through are the same type of things that the children will be doing in school in year 6. So what we're trying to say is whatever they're doing in year 6 and whatever things are happening for the key worker children across the federation will also be kind of the same things we'll be sending home as well. So we're trying to balance up what they're doing in school and what is required at home. I know it won't be the same because they're not in school, but essentially it will be as balanced and as mirrored as we possibly can make it. No, so so if you send your child in, and the local authority will be very clear about this, they're not going to be fining any parents for non-attendance. And so if they're not feeling particularly happy about it, and it's your decision whether you want to send them back. Obviously, just keep communicating with us. Yeah, as I mentioned, the government well, we haven't heard much from the government really, have we, since they made that statement that children will be going back to school, the rest of the children will be going back to school at least a month before we break up. So that would be, well, just trying to think, that'd be around the 14th, 15th of June, wouldn't it? And so how that will happen, I don't know. And as I said in my previous touch base letter on Dojo, we are looking at how that would work in a school where we're obviously using the whole of the infant school for key worker children reception. We're using quite a lot of the classes at the junior school for year 6. Personally, I can't see how it's going to work with the space that we have. And I think every single school in the country will be thinking, how do I accommodate under the current social distancing measures the rest of the children into school? But it might happen, and we never know. Hopefully it'll all be fine and everyone will be 100% safe and we can get them all in before the summer. And that being said, I'm sure you're thinking, will the summer holidays be used for key worker families? I don't know. And I think from my point of view, I'm incredibly proud to work in a team of staff that really haven't had a break yet. They've worked through Easter, they've worked through will be working through their half terms. They're constantly trying to stay in contact with you folk, which obviously they want to do, which is great. But there's got to be a point where our staff need to have a break as well before we start back again, and when that will be, hopefully in September. But that they do need a break as well. So we try to make sure that we're looking after the staff as well as the children in terms of their well-being, and rota the staff over this next 2 to 3 weeks so they do get an element of time at home. Yep, so as I said, when the children come in, they will know who their staff are. They're not going to be different, particularly in reception. Obviously, when it comes to year 6, we know Mrs. Hancock's currently at home on maternity, and we've got, obviously, Miss Phillips will be there. Then you've got the other Key Stage 2 staff, which all the children will know and have been taught by before. Yeah, so Mr. Taylor, we're following the normal kind of thing that we're doing at the moment in school, the phonics, literacy and maths. That will still be happening. The afternoon sessions, so I haven't seen what the afternoon sessions will look like yet, but again, they will form part of some more creative activities for the children to do. And as I said, we'll try and mirror that kind of information that's going on in class onto the Dojo pages for the children to do as well. Yeah, I just want to kind of confirm that pretty much anywhere children and staff will be cleaned. Handles, rooms, surfaces. The year 6 is going to be a bit more involved in that. They're going to have their own desk and they're going to have their own cloths and things, and they can do their own cleaning. And all the sprays that we've got are all child friendly. They're all protected for children to use and spray. Gloves will be there if necessary. And so it's trying to make it a little bit of fun as well for them, as much as it's going to be a little bit alien. I haven't thought about September yet, Mr. Taylor, if I'm honest. I still don't know. After the 31st of May, I need to know which staff I've got. But I suppose, and I'm not guaranteeing anything, I'm not confirming anything until we know exactly what the September background and climate looks like. And I've said this before, I feel when children come back in September, because obviously we've got to consider the fact that we've got new reception children coming in, that the children need to spend some time in their previous class, which obviously will have an impact on the children coming in as new reception children as well. So I'm not going to say exactly what September looks like yet, because none of us really know. But for the children's peace of mind, your peace of mind, I would want the children to spend at least some time in their previous class just to say hi to their previous teachers, and before they go up to their new classes, new year groups for the new teachers. Okay. Right. Is there anything else, chaps and chapesses? Just trying to think. I've covered most things. Yeah, so as I said, just keep in contact with me. If your situation changes at home, and you need key worker vision, just let me know, and the children can be added to the list. I've already sent out a notification about that for the next 2 weeks. We've got next week sorted, but by the end of next week, next Friday, I'll send out another notice to say if you're obviously a key worker family or going to be a key worker family, let me know, and I can tell Mrs. Smith, who will then add the children to the list, just so know how many we've got. Because obviously if that escalates, that potentially could change how things work for the other year groups. Yeah, so it still include this. So the morning session will include a snack time for reception. And please do. I think it says on the reception details that you need to send in a snack with them. Absolutely. Okay. If you're in receipt of free school meals, those vouchers are still happening. As far as we're aware, the government haven't stopped that scheme, so you should still be receiving those vouchers. So if you're sending a child in year 6 and you're in receipt of those vouchers, then please do provide that packed lunch, because I've told our catering services they're not needed on site, obviously again to reduce the amount of people on site, and it's another place that we don't have to clean, which is obviously time we can spend more with the children. So that is still continuing, the free school meal voucher scheme. Okay, folks. Okay. Yeah, thanks, Mr. Carter. I wouldn't want to coin the phrase normal at all at the moment. And I've been considering the well-being, particularly of all the children that have been coming into school, and how we help them. I know Mrs. Cross sent out some things and some anxiety forms and support sheets for you. I think it was yesterday or the day before. And that's my main concern, particularly the youngsters, particularly the 4 and 5-year-olds coming back into something. And I really appreciate that the situation they're currently in, they're getting used to as a new normal. And that's a bit of an alien situation for them as well. I mean, it's great that they've had mum and dad at home potentially, and they've done lots of work, and I'm sure you've enjoyed that time. It's been a bit of a blessing. But I think equally, then is also going to be another alien situation, because it's not going to be exactly the same as it was, obviously, for the reasons that we need to follow. But we will make it as comfortable and as familiar for them as possible. So the same rooms, same toys, same faces. It just be a little bit different. And I'm just very aware that for me, that's one of the most important things. And I think one thing that our government may have missed a little bit is that mental health and well-being. And it's not necessarily been given the focus, and how children are going to have to try to change, particularly our 4 and 5-year-olds, of going from different environments over the past 12 weeks. So what all you're doing at home in preparing them to come back to school is admirable, and it's going to be really going to have a positive impact on how they then fit back into a very new environment again. Yes, I think Mrs. Cross said something about something out on the dojo page. I think I'll double check, but there's some sheets and resources and things you need to consider and think about, and how you can talk to the children about that. I'll check up on that for you, Mrs. Thornton. But yes, and I didn't really want to mention it today with the children, and I think I'll mention it a little bit next week, and I'll go through some of the things that they were experienced when they come back on Monday. But I didn't want them to worry about it for the next week or so, so I didn't mention anything today. But I will say some bits and pieces next Friday, just to kind of put their minds at rest. Okay, well, I'll check with Mrs. Cross, but I'm certain I saw something. It might have just gone on the infant page, perhaps. Let me just double check for you. Okay, so yeah, managing children's anxiety. I think it's gone onto the infant page for obviously for the younger children, and it went on yesterday about staying healthy, staying calm, which I thought was really useful. And there's a young minds thing about how the coronavirus is impacting young people and the health needs around that. So I think that's really good. And I think there's supporting children through the coronavirus as well. And there's lots of things that you can talk about, feelings and worries there. And I think there's some links on there that will be really supportive. And I think there's lots of stuff that Mrs. Cross has spent a lot of time compiling that for you, just to help you through this. But the Young Minds website is fantastic. And I was on a webinar with Knight Smith, who's a doctor in mental health for young children. And Pookie's doing a brand new kind of universal program called SWAN, which is staying safe, welcoming, all together, and nurture. And there's loads of great resources on there. And I'll dojo a link to that. And the school's going to look at that as well. It's called SWAN. And there's some fantastic things you can talk to the children about on there. But yeah, Miss Thornton, what I'll do is I'll get Mrs. Cross to put those PDFs onto the junior page as well. Absolutely fine. It is on the junior page, apparently. Okay. Unless that's just happened this very second. So yeah, just to confirm, I've had a just text through. It is so for year 6, it's so even load on Monday and Tuesday, and CAM a Thursday and Friday. And the main reason we've done it in a phased part-time entry is because if we are asked to open up the school for the rest of the children, there's no way we can go from a full-time and then parents get their whole work schedule sorted and then reduce it down to part-time again, because that's not necessarily fair on the parents that have organised work commitments. So we're doing part-time, which is manageable within the school. And if we are asked to bring other year groups back, at least we're starting from a blueprint that is part-time, which we can adapt more effectively than we would do if we were full-time. Yeah, it's now on the junior page, I think. So thank you, Mrs. Cross, if you've just put that on. Right, okay. Or maybe she hasn't put it on. Mrs. Cross, if you're listening, could you please put those documents on that you put on the infant page? I think some of the junior parents would like to just read through them. I think some useful stuff on there that you've collated. So if you could do that and you're listening, great. Thank you. Right, I hope there's a lot there. And I opened up my letter this morning with just thank you all for being so patient and completing the survey. That was really useful. It really did help us understand where you are. And I think it's really important to know that if you're deciding not to send your child to school, if you're deciding not to do that, that's okay. But if you do change your mind, that's also okay. Just let us know. And if you want your child then to come back to school, then we'll obviously make sure we'll do all we can to be as flexible as we can for you. Yeah, so Caitlin's mum, if there is a return for the other school years, the other cohorts, it will have to be part-time. We won't be able to manage full-time for the other cohorts. It's just impossible. We don't have the space or the staff to do that. So it would have to be part-time. You may have read the guidance from the Department for Education from government. Obviously, you're against local authorities putting in part-time provision, but I don't think they quite understand that if we had everyone in full-time, we wouldn't be able to adhere to any of the measures that they're also pontificating. So it's a double-edged sword, and this is our offer. This is what we're going to do to make sure the children are safe in school and the staff are safe in school, as well as pick up on some of the curriculum that we obviously we need to deliver for them. So as I said, thanks ever so much for listening. Thanks for tuning in. I would say that there's lots of hard work from all the staff, and I just want to thank all the staff for what they're doing. I think The staff are working incredibly hard behind the scenes, and if we're not picking up communication straight away, we apologise for that. But we are getting a lot of communication from you, which is great. So we know you're there. But yes, thank you for being patient. Thank you for listening today. If you've got any concerns or any worries, you know I'm here. Send me a text, send me an email, anything at all, and I'll get back to you as soon as I possibly can. So yeah, thanks for stopping by and for your kind comments that you're sending through. And I will, if anything happens over the weekend, if there are any other further announcements, I'll do an extraordinary again if things change before the 1st of June, obviously. But take care, have a nice weekend, and hopefully the sun will come out at some point. Okay, cheerio, folks. Bye-bye.